I propose that nowadays people are not very intelligent. Why? Because they have cow dung for brain. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. But the first statement I said, that people nowadays generally are not very intelligent, I stay behind that, and I'll guide you through my quick presentation here. Why? Because people allow themselves to be guided by their emotions, by their feelings, rather than by their rational side, by the intellect. And for many people this won't resonate too much, but I'll repeat this, and then I'll show you how this is so. People aren't intelligent. Why? Because they allow themselves to be purely guided by sentiments and emotions, feelings, and so on and so forth. I feel, therefore it is. But, I mean, many people felt weird things all throughout history. Hitler felt he should rid the world of anyone who isn't German, or at least anyone who isn't white. He felt very strongly, very passionately about it. So if we were to set the feeling as the standard for judging right from wrong, or objective from not objective, then I think we set ourselves huge trouble. And nowadays, especially in spiritual circles, it's very common. It's actually, people often say, I feel, therefore it is. Feelings are okay, but I'm saying is, if you allow yourself to be pulled only by the feelings and emotions, you're not very intelligent. And that's literally so. Because let's look at the human makeup. What are the humans made up of? First of all, the Vedas teach that humans are made up of two bodies, the gross and the subtle body. And the gross body is made up of solids, liquids, gas, space, warmth, whatever else I'm missing, like solids, like things that are solid, like skin, bone, stuff. Liquids, well, you don't want to open this body to see what's on the inside, but the liquids of this body aren't all too pretty. This is the composition of the gross body. And now, what's the composition of the subtle body? The composition of subtle body, according to the philosophy of yoga, is there are three elements: the mind, the intellect, and the ego. Actually, specifically false ego, and then real ego. So these are 3 or 4 elements. And what are the functions? Okay, so you have a mind, you have intellect, and we all witness activities of our minds and of our intellects. Okay, so you have a mind, you have an intellect, and you have an ego. Now, ego, we know what it is. Ego means identification. I am. I identify myself. I have some kind. It's a concept. I have a concept what I am. But what's the function of the mind? What else? Has anyone ever thought, what are the functions of the mind? Memory? Okay. Make decisions? Not quite. Wandering mind wonders. Okay. What does mind do?
Put us in trouble.
Put us in trouble. Very often.
Process the images that you get via your senses.
Say that again?
Process the images that you get via your senses.
Process the images. The mind feels.
Yeah.
The mind's definitely processing images, but mind primarily feels. Mind primarily feels. And this feeling has 3 stages. Please stay with me. 3 stages. Thinking, feeling, and willing. This is how it goes. And they progressively go tougher to turn around. For example, first you think of something. You think of, I don't know, food you like to eat, And then next thing you're feeling it. I mean, you're thinking of it so much, you're almost experiencing, you almost have a physical experience of it. So thinking, feeling, and then the third one is willing. Once you come to this stage of willing, there's no going back. Hardly. Because you just darn want it. And no matter what it is, whether it's something that's conducive to your well-being or not, you just want it. And it all started with thinking. Thinking, feeling, and willing. And all this, what for? Just to accept and reject. This is mine. You know, I like this, I don't like that. In other words, the mind cannot just be an objective observer, a dispassionate observer. Mind accepts and rejects. I like this, I like you, you make me feel good, and I don't like you, you make me feel bad. No matter how objective that is, you may, relating to me in a particular fashion, but my mind registered as something unwanted, and therefore I reject. So these are now what are the activities of intellect? Or what are the functions of the intellect? Or its characteristics?
Discriminate.
Discriminate. Nowadays people say don't discriminate. If you don't discriminate, you're an absolute fool. We should discriminate all the time. What kind of food do I eat? How do I treat people? I mean, how do I relate to other people? How do I relate to anything? This is all based on discrimination. What's the purpose of education? To make you discriminate. You must discriminate. Why do kids don't have full freedom? Because their ability to discriminate is not developed. They'll run across the street running after a ball without thinking that there's cars running up and down the street. And mother will have a heart attack, thinking, you fool, you idiot, I told you well. So to discriminate, that's one important one. Intellect discriminates, and there's nothing wrong about discrimination. Now, people often toss the baby with the bathwater. There's good and bad discrimination. There's irrational discrimination. That's not the discrimination of the intellect. That's the discrimination of the mind. I like you, I don't like you, because you're not making me feel good. How objective that is. So what else does the intellect do?
Analyze.
Say that again?
Analyze.
Analyze. Very good. Very good. Mind analyzes. In order to discriminate, you have to analyze. If you're not able, mind doesn't analyze. Mind just thinks, oh, I like this, and I don't like, or I don't like it. But have anyone here smoked cigarettes and tried to quit? Anyone ever been in that position? Oh, gee, we got a good crowd here. That was hell. I mean, I tried to quit, and then after a meal, you have a full belly, and then the mind says, cigarette. And then the intellect, from the other side of the brain, says, wait a sec, we said we're not going to do that anymore. For this, that, and the other reason, and list all the good reasons. But the mind is not rational. Otherwise, the mind would be intellect. The mind simply feels. Mind says, no, I want that freaking feeling. I want to feel like that. And the mind keeps banging. I want. I can't give a good reason. He just wants. And then the intellect goes again and lists all the good reasons, but the mind doesn't give a darn. And you end up doing it again. So hard to quit. This is just one simple function. What else does the intellect do? Makes plans. Okay, now we're getting close.
It controls the mind.
Say that again?
It can control the mind.
It has the potency to control the mind. This is the natural function of the intellect, to guide the mind. To guide the mind. Now, there's one more thing that intellect does. Intellect is good at mechanics. Mechanics in the sense that the intellect, the mind will decide, I want to do this, and then the intellect will come up with intelligent ways of doing it. Like you want to steal something, and the intellect will come up because it's a mechanical thing that understands mechanics. Mechanics means you do this, and that will initiate this kind of reaction. That will initiate that kind of reaction. That will initiate that kind of reaction, and I will get the reaction I want. This is intellect. But who wants? The mind wants. Okay? So, so these are important. Keep this in mind, please, as we go along. Now, I'd like to tell you something really brief on the... I learned this from a saint who lived in 1900s, early 1900s. And he said that the purpose of life is not to be reasonable. He said that the purpose of life is not to be reasonable. He said that the purpose of life is to love. And this is what many modern spiritualists would claim. Yet they live it on this platform. And they say that the way to judge the world is by feeling. I feel it, therefore it is. I say, no, it's wrong. The goal of life is to love. But to love is blind. Never heard this before? To love is blind. And therefore the purpose of the intellect, the purpose of the reason, is not to butcher the love. It's not to butcher the emotion. Its function rather is to guide the love. Without this very important function of the intellect, you'll get yourself in trouble time and time again. And even when you so-called practice spiritual life, you're not really practicing spiritual life for the most part. Because this is where yoga begins. Yoga begins at this level, that you control the mind by the intellect. The whole purpose of education, the whole purpose of wisdom is to feed the intellect, to feed the reason, so you can properly guide the love, the emotion, so that emotion can properly develop. This is very important. Okay, and I'd like to give you one example to illustrate this. One more example. In Sanskrit, Sanskrit is this language in which yoga philosophy is written, has this idea of a vantashi. Vantashi means one who eats one's own vomit. Pretty gross. Now, I chose a gross example to illustrate something very important. I've never seen anyone do that, by the way. Gee. I've seen dogs do that. Alright, excuse me, I won't go any further. So, what is the idea? The idea is that we vomit. In other words, we ingest things. We ingest things. We take things in our lives, and then we throw them out. We reject them. We don't want them anymore. And then after some time, in other words, we had experience. This thing's no good. Comes out. You throw it away. Throw it out. Throw it up. But then later on, after some time, you think, wait a sec. Maybe there is something in there. And then you go in there and pick. So that is the idea of a vantashi, or one who picks through one's own vomit. Excuse a strong example, but Yoga Sutras often use, not often, but at times use strong examples to kind of awaken us to reality. Now, what would be a good example of someone rejecting something and then later on accepting it again? Rejecting it on very intelligent, reasonable grounds, and then later on accepting it again.
Smoking, like that.
Smoking, that's a good one. Yeah, and you go back to smoking. I have a friend I'm using his term. He called himself a corporate slut, prostitute. And in other words, he completely sacrificed his freedom, his autonomy. Autonomy or orthonomy? How do you spell it? Autonomy. Like sacrificed his own autonomy. What for? For prostitution, just to get money. He worked for a guy who was paying a lot, but he had to please the guy. Guy was irrational, not reasonable, abusive, disrespectful, belittling people, and he had to take all this up his. What for? So that he could make all this money. So